So what's being summarized today? On one hand, we got an intellectual that has that thinks we have a parasitic mind. On the other hand, we got a lady that's talking about nukes and how the world can end 72 minutes after the first rocket is launched. Or if we keep both hands up, how this partnership between these two individuals are making the Brazil the new dictatorship. Not a good thing. Or how about we just relax a bit, we have a comedian, and then AI with the new world order? That is what's being summarized today in episode 13 of the podcast summary report. Stay with me. Welcome back, podcast listeners, to episode 13 of the podcast summary report. We got a special episode today because we're reviewing or summarizing 5 podcasts for your content today. First one is Joe Rogan Experience, episode 2148 with Gad Saad, an intellectual that lasted 3 hours and 30 minutes. The next one is Joe Rogan Experience with Sebastian Maniscalco, a comedian. This one lasted 2 hours and 50 minutes with 48 seconds. Third podcast review today is The Diary of CEO with Annie Jacobsen, which was 2 hours and 11 minutes with 42 seconds. Fourth, the PBD Podcast, Patrick Bet David Podcast, for episode 409 with Brazil and conservative politicians, which is 1 hour and 53 minutes and 59 seconds. Bringing it all together, last podcast reviews is the All In Podcast with Sam Altman with 1 hour and 43 minutes and 3 seconds. Let's get right into our first podcast review today, which is Joe Rogan Experience with Gad Saad. Now, this is actually a really enjoyable podcast. I like Gad. This is the 10th time Gad has visited the Joe Rogan Experience. They're good friends. Joe likes Gad's intellectual conversations, just overall his funny instructor, professor conversations. They just discuss so many different topics. And I wanted to listen to Gad's thoughts on what's going on with the Israeli and Hamas conflict, because Gad is a Jew from Lebanon. He was exiled from Lebanon when there was a civil unrest in that country in his childhood, and that just shaped his life and got him down to this intellectual path. And he's an author of several books. Parasitic Mind is one of his bestsellers, and also The Sad Truth of Happiness, which is just his new one. And he just talks about how it's important for us to be able to change our mindset, because Joe asked him a question in this podcast, and I'll tell you the whole summary of the 3 hours and 30-minute podcast is, Joe asked him, "So, Gad, what is the thing that you've realized that has been the most difficult throughout your career and your research and all the hours that you spend just trying to shape young people's minds and old, and et cetera, et cetera?" Gad summarized it all in this. He said that what he has seen the most difficult part of everything is to try to change someone's mind. If we are so convinced in one thing and we believe that we're right, trying to convince that person otherwise, he says that has been the most difficult thing to do in his career and his life. So you'll get to see it in a lot of the timestamps that I've incorporated throughout this podcast, how they just talk about so many different things: the importance of Israel, the suicidal empathy, the human memory, how that's been built across our life and our childhood and our adulthood, consiliences, Einstein and God, just so many different topics. It's a great conversation. It's an intellectual conversation. Joe enjoys it a lot, and let me tell you, I enjoyed it a lot as well. It's for us nerds that we like to have that critical mindset, critical thinking, and I recommend it to you for that, because it continues to to challenge you in the way you think, in the way that we perceive just the left and right, and all those different types of perspectives, how we continue to grasp those types of concepts. I really like Gad. Check out his books. Check out his teachings. He's a very open-minded, but also just the way he explains certain concepts are very easily understood. So I like Gad. I like Gad Saad. I recommend this episode to you. It's a little bit on the long side, but yeah, you can chunk it up into small sections, and that's what I've tried to do in the timestamps. So hope you enjoy this podcast. It's the number one in our review, but recommendations from me to you. All right, number 2 is Joe Rogan Experience, episode 2149 with Sebastian Maniscalco. All right, similar. You know Joe, he loves to invite comedians, so this is one of them. And Sebastian has been a very successful comedian, both in his specials and stand-up, and also in Hollywood. He has several movies underneath his belt. If you know now in my episodes, I don't dive too deep into these summaries with comedians because they're just having a chat, they're just laughing, they're having a blast and just reminiscing, etc., talking about their experiences, past experiences, etc. I got a few timestamps that you will like. Joe talks about his meat diet. Sebastian talks about no body odor, and just everything along the last few years of Sebastian and how they just have a blast and talk about funny things. I laughed. It's a good one to listen to if you have time. But just overall, main things that I got from Sebastian. Sebastian was just sharing his life experience with Joe in the last 5 years, and just how he's getting older and enjoying more his family. He's loved the correlation between work and success and everything just in between. So great chat from these two guys. I enjoyed it. If you don't want to just listen to two comedians, you can skip this particular episode. I liked it. I had fun. And it's a good hour and a good 2 hours episode, so not too bad. So that's video podcast number 2 reviewed, Sebastian Maniscalco with Joe Rogan, 2049. All right, moving into, let's call it a cold bucket of water dumped in our heads with the third podcast review today, The Diary of CEO, with Annie Jacobsen, a nuke expert. So what do I call her a nuke expert? She's just a recent author of her book, and which her book talks about the industrial military complex and nukes. Yes, nuclear weapons, nuclear warheads, and the possibility in our world of a nuclear Armageddon war. And what she says is, nobody wins this war. Everybody dies. And just 70% of the humans in this world would perish in those first 72 minutes. And then everybody else, after those 72 first minutes, that will live and try to survive, would envy the dead. Because you would go into this nuclear winter and just everything would be just a living hell. Well, let me tell you, if I can sum up this episode in one comment from the listeners. It was just so harsh. She was just expressing her interviews, her research that she has done throughout the years about all these different countries, especially the United States and Russia, that have nuclear warheads and nuclear weapons. It is just quite interesting how she is so calm, but she's trying to be optimistic and share what she has found throughout the years, so it could get us to start changing our perception with these nuclear warheads. And not just us citizens, because it's not like how I'm going to do much, right? But also Congress and leaders, that they listen, that so they can realize how dangerous this is. And nobody wins. Everybody loses. Everybody dies in this nuclear holocaust, right? But also how close we truly are from one of these nukes, or from one of these wars to actually start. She talks about some of her interviews in the past and how close we have been to reaching a nuclear war because of just some mistakes, some nuclear war game stages that once they thought it was real. And it's just a quite a scary conversation, scary topic. Stephen, which is the interviewer in the Diary of CEO, some comments were like, "How, Stephen? Why did you even have this in your podcast? This is quite different from your previous guests." But hey, once we listen to something, we are aware, and we can start to have those conversations. I just really liked one comment. I said, "Oh, Annie is the author, and Annie is available for birthday parties or for child's birthday parties." It got just so many laughs. You can sense the podcast theme was so dire and so, oh my goodness, it was just like I'm telling you, a cold bucket of water just poured. Like, oh my goodness, a chill, a very cold chill through our myself when I was listening to the podcast. So hopefully this never happens. I'm optimistic as well. Her book, the goal of her book is to stop us, stop the leaders, stop the countries from continuing down this path of just nuclear escalation. But you never know. More can come or more can stop, right? But hopefully what Annie is trying to do is just to be optimistic and calm the tensions down, especially in war. But we as humans won't live to talk about it past a nuclear war. So I believe that will never happen. That is my belief, but only time will tell. That is podcast number 3. All right, moving into podcast number 4, which is the PBD Podcast, episode 409. And this is from 4 guests from Brazil. Now, I don't know all their names. They're in the description. You can find a full episode in this one. But quite an interesting episode because my heritage is Mexican. But I've also known a lot of people from Brazil. And they're such warm-hearted individuals. It's such a nice country. I would always used to hear that there's only one country friendlier than Mexico, and that is Brazil. Well, this episode is a little bit disheartening because what they're experiencing right now in Brazil is something really, really difficult because they have a new president, and this president is from the left, and they are censoring and preventing anybody from the opposite side, from the conservative side, anybody that has a criticism from the government, from that socialist government, from the dictatorship of a government. Anybody that has any opposing views, they can either block their accounts, they can either jail them, or they can do horrible things to them. So what they're experiencing right now in Brazil is very difficult, and you could see it now in the people that are supporting the opposition candidate, which is Bolsonaro. I don't even know if I said that name correctly. But it's just they are trying to these 4 individuals to speak, and they can be heard because they can no longer speak in Brazil. They'll have investigations rallied against them. They'll have the Supreme Court just trying to see if they've broken the law by saying criticism against that government. And it's just really a quite harsh thing to see to a country was democratic, and right now is being controlled by the extreme left and a future dictator. So hopefully things can turn around. They're going to have upcoming elections, and we wish the best to Brazil. This is a very interesting podcast. If you like politics, if you like the world and how different societies are going towards going through their political changes and structures, I recommend this episode to you. It opens your eyes to see what other countries are going through, and just you always wish the best for all individuals. You always wish the best for both sides, but right now one side is really controlling the entire country, and it's taking that country to not a right direction. So Brazil, stay strong. Brazil, continue to have these conversations, and to all those Brazilians, go out and vote. That is the most important thing you can do. So, episode from the PBD Podcast, episode 409, Brazil and what's happening to them. That is reviewed today. Recommendation for those that like this type of content. All right, bringing it all together now. Last episode review today was the All In Podcast, episode 179 with Sam Altman. And quite a fun episode. It lasted 1 hour and 43 minutes. The first hour was the interview with Sam. Everything that's been going on with OpenAI, the future release of ChatGPT 5.0, when is going to be that timeline. Sam didn't really say it. How new advanced agents in the ChatGPT portfolio are going to be able to help us. They try to poke him here and there, left and right, to see if he could share any information of any new improvements. Sam really wasn't too forthcoming. David Sachs kind of asked him a couple of times here and there, and it's just like you can see the comments how, I don't know, 30 minutes, 40 minutes into the conversation, into the interview I was in, and I was like, you start unconsciously setting up a perception of the interviewee, which in this case is Sam, but you don't want to be biased, right? But then, like I said, 40 minutes or 45 minutes in, I started reading some of the comments, and you start to laugh because you start to see what they experienced, if it coincides with your experience, right? And you can see a lot of the individuals saying, Sam says, doesn't say much, but after saying so many words, or like, you can see how Sam just is so confusing and just just goes around in circles and truly doesn't say much. Almost like the first 20 comments were just like that. I was like, wow, man, I didn't want to be biased, but I felt it too. So the four hosts, David and the others, enjoyed the conversation. They enjoyed asking him questions. They actually enjoyed asking him about why he got fired and all the drama behind that, and he was able to share a little bit about experience. Why did it happen? He didn't get into too much details, but he talked about the importance of a good board and everything, and how he's back as the CEO of OpenAI. But overall, I call it a good interview. It wasn't great. They could be improved. They didn't really push him or really had hard questions. It was like softball questions. But hey, it's a guest, right? You don't want to annoy your guest. And then after the interview finished, they did a little post-interview recap. They talked about, they enjoyed it. They talked about some of Sam's comments and overall, And they closed the podcast by mainly two things. How Apple is slowly, let's say, being less creative, slowly, I don't want to say, but almost dying, because they reviewed the last commercial from Apple, that they have this huge hydraulic press with a lot of creative music items, records, sports, colors, etc. And this just hydraulic press is starting compressing everything and breaking everything. Just you can see everything explode. And then when it goes all the way to the very bottom, you have a very flat, super thin iPad, I think. iPad or Mac PC, I don't even know. And they're saying, why would they even do this? I didn't even like that commercial. So, and I agree, I didn't like it either. It's just but what they're trying to say is, where's that new product from Apple? Where's that new thing? Where's it coming from? Are they just going to stay in this market, or they're going to slowly start dying? So that was a very interesting topic of their conversation. And finally, they talked about new Google's AI and how the advancement on that and everything. So my summary to you from this All-In podcast is, if you like OpenAI, if you like Apple, if you like Google, listen to this. Because like I'm telling you, these four individuals are entrepreneurs, innovators, disruptors, and they have that mindset, they have that knowledge. They are tech world completely. So you can gain some insight from their conversations. So good podcast. I don't recommend it to everyone. It's only an hour and 43 minutes. You can skip it or you can listen to it. But if you really like the open AI conversation, make sure you click on it. Excellent, my friends. Hope you enjoyed this special episode with 5 podcasts being reviewed today. And as always, if you like the content, don't forget to comment. Even one comment helps me out. Tell me what you want to listen to. Tell me what you want to hear. And as always, if you continue to like what you see, please click on these 2 episodes. They have a lot what I'm showing you. And in 2 upcoming episodes, I'm going to tell you of all the 50 podcasts that I summarized to you today, which are the top 3 best that you should listen to. All right, have a good one and keep listening.